Welcome to the Young and Driven podcast. I am your host, Olivia. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, I want to thank you and welcome you. You're in for a treat. If you're a returning listener, I thank you as well. This is a podcast made by a creative for creatives. We're going to be talking about all different things that we as creatives relate to, from mental health to ways to be better at your craft and all things in between. I typically like to keep the podcast episodes short, no longer than 15 minutes, but sometimes, 5 to 10 minutes. So it's not going to take up too much of your time, but if you're a creative and you like some of the stuff that I talk about, I recommend you subscribe to the podcast. The podcast is available on all podcast platforms, so Spotify, Google. We should be on Apple Podcasts. I know there was some type of delay, but we should be on Apple and anywhere else you can stream audio of podcasts. If you're on YouTube, you might notice there's a visual aspect now, or if you're watching this on my Instagram, I added a visual portion of the podcast as well now, so you can see me as well as hear me. You have both options. I did that for a few different reasons. One, I thought it would make the podcast better, not only to market. I can do like clips now on my Instagram, and it's not just like a still picture, it's a video, so those tend to be more engaging, but also just quality wise, I felt like it was a great way to improve the podcast. I know as a podcast listener myself, I do sometimes like to watch the podcast if I do have that option. So that was one reasoning. But like I said, there's 2 other episodes that I already put out. And then there's actually 2 other episodes that I recorded and that were supposed to go out. But after listening to all those episodes, I noticed certain areas of improvement. So instead of putting out some of those older episodes that I already recorded, I really sat down and thought of ways to improve the podcast. Yes, I can get more engagement by marketing more and doing stuff like that, but I really wanted to make the podcast better, really better for people. So I thought visually was a great way to enhance that. But not only that, just the content and the value that I'm putting into the podcast. So I'm going to structure my podcast now with segments, and this will be the first episode that I'm trying that out. So you'll see how that goes. And then as I continue to put out more podcasts, you'll probably see more changes, hopefully, if you stay around, and you'll see the improvement. So if you're a listener, a returning listener, please leave a like or subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Give feedback, that really helps. I'll appreciate that. But yeah, that's what's happening with the podcast. So let's go into our first segment, and the first segment is real short. It's something I like to call the quote of the week. And this will be a segment where I just share a quote with you guys, something that either resonated with me or I thought would be inspiring or motivating to you guys out there. So let me share the quote. I have it here on my phone, so I'm just going to read it out. And the quote says, "You become stronger and more confident by showing the courage to change the things you have control over." I'm going to read that one more time because I thought it was really good. You become stronger and more confident by showing the courage to change the things you have control over. That was a really great quote, and I feel it kind of ties in somewhat to the topic of today's episode. And so in today's episode, I wanted to talk about something I feel a lot of creatives struggle with. I know it's something I tend to struggle with at times as well, and that is putting yourself on a schedule. I know as a creative, it can be hard to really have discipline and prioritize when you can't create. We like to work off inspiration and quote unquote being in the zone. And to some certain extent, I understand that and I get that as a creative. I actually totally get that. Because it can be hard to force yourself to do something that you normally love to do. When you're not in the mood to it. It makes it not fun. You don't want to do it. You don't feel authentic doing it. So I get that. I understand wanting to be in the zone when you create. However, you have to realize that making time to work on your craft, whether it's 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, even if you don't feel like it, and even when you sit down to, write that song or write that script, whatever it is you do, and you come up with something you would think is trash or not good, you have to look at these as not failed moments, but very important steps in your journey to be successful in your craft as a creative, right? You have to stop judging your progress and how well you're doing by looking at the final project. Every time you sit down at your desk to write or create or whatever it is that you do, every time you sit down, you don't have to come up with your best stuff. You don't have to, hit a home run every time you come up to bat, right? These little moments of you pushing through and creating even when you don't feel like it, or you feel like what you're coming up with is not good, these are super important moments because you're doing a couple different things. One, you're building trust in yourself, and trust as a creative is one of the most important things you have to have. If you don't trust yourself, if you don't trust your ideas, your instincts, you'll never be able to go where you want to go in your career, in your craft, if you don't trust yourself. So you have to trust yourself. So when you sit down and those words are not coming to you, or what you're coming up with, like I said, you don't feel is up to your standard, you have to trust and know in yourself that the right words will come, the right melody will come, right? The right idea for a new script will come. Like, you have to trust that those ideas are in you and you're capable. So putting yourself on a schedule and basically applying structure into your life is going to help you immensely. Like I said, building trust in yourself. And then the other part is structure. You need structure to be successful, right? As you grow in your career and in your business, there's going to be a lot more variables going on. So building that habit of creating structure early in your career is a great habit that you should build upon. And another thing I will say about creating schedules and why I feel like we as creatives tend to hesitate when creating one for ourselves is that we tend to make schedules that are not based off our weaknesses and strengths. We tend to kind of mold them after like our work schedules, or if you go to school, like how between most typical jobs, it's an 8-hour job, and regardless of how you feel between these hours, XYZ has to get done, right? And as a creative, that type of scheduling doesn't work best with us. Like I said, we like to work off inspiration and things like that. And though, like I said earlier, there are times when you kind of have to push yourself to create and do things even when you don't feel like it, there still should be a balance of, making the right schedule that works for you. So if you're a type of person that knows you can dedicate and you can focus, hours on one particular task, and you can be, at 100%, give 110% at whatever you're doing for like a couple hours, then make a schedule that reflects that. But if you're a person that's like, I can only do 30 minutes, where I can give 110%, like in 30 minutes, that's all you can give, but you're at your prime, then make a schedule that reflects that. I know me personally, I am not a morning person. Like, if you know me in real life, 100% I am not a morning person. I don't want to talk to nobody in the morning. I don't feel creative in the morning. I don't want to make beats. Like, I don't want to do anything where I gotta like really think a lot, or I'm just not a morning person. So knowing this, when I tend to do stuff creative, whether it's shooting videos, making beats, writing, well, not so much writing, I can write in the morning, but really anything where I have to be super creative, I typically don't do that in the morning. And that's just me knowing and being honest with myself. And so I make a schedule that reflects that. So not being a morning person and knowing that my afternoons to my nights are tied up with, working on my craft, whether it be, making content and whatnot. Since that is all tied up, I still need time for self-care. I still need time to, plan out videos for weeks ahead and different things like that. So that's what I use my mornings for now. And I have a routine that has been working for me. Like I said, this is something I struggle with. So I've been on my new schedule for about a week now. And it is working for me, right? I wake up around 8 a.m. And for some people that's early, some people that's not. But for me personally, that's a little early. So I get up at 8, shower, do my skincare regimen. I do some yoga, so stretching, getting some physical exercise is important. I'll do about 15 minutes of yoga, probably go on a walk for about 15 minutes. I come back and then I'll spend like 20-30 minutes just writing. And this is another thing that I recommend. You don't necessarily have to put it in your schedule, but it's just something I always recommend to all different types of creatives, and that's just writing at least like 5 minutes a day. When you wake up is great, but you can do it also right before you go to bed. Just write your intentions. It's a great way just to clear your head and just kind of organize your ideas. If you're a person like me that constantly has different ideas and different things that they're working on, just writing, being able to write your thoughts out is a great way to organize all that stuff. It's another way to provide structure in your life. So I'll do that in the morning, and that all takes me about 2 hours. But yeah, that's my schedule. My mornings, I keep it light and basically self-care and the small things that I can get done that are not creative based. That way my afternoons and evenings are free to dedicate 110% to the things that I want to get done and that I know need to get done. So that is my 2 cents on that. If you don't already have your own schedule, create a schedule for yourself as a creative. Is so important to have structure in your life. So I recommend that. But before we get out of here, I want to introduce the last segment of the podcast, and that is the question of the day. I believe questions are a great thing to ask yourself so you can kind of self-assess where you are in life. They can help you overcome any obstacles that you're currently facing. Regardless if you know the answer or not, asking certain questions really are a great way for you to self-reflect. So the question that I have for you guys this week is, what would your younger self think of the you that you are today? So I thought that was a really great question. What would your younger self think of you today? We typically, as people, are always super hard on ourselves and always say, oh, I'm not where I want to be. But if your younger self, you can go as far as back as you want. What would your younger self think of you today? And that's just something you can sit with and think with during this week. But that's all I have for today's episode. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed it. If you're listening on traditional podcast platforms, please leave a like and review. If you're watching this, also leave a like and review. You can subscribe to the channel if you like. Let me know what you think about the new format. Do you like the segments? If you're watching this, let me know how you like the video. Is it fine? I'm playing around with some lighting and different things like that. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on my social media at Young and Driven. All my links that you guys would possibly need will be in the respective places. So wherever you're listening or watching this at, I'll have all my links. But I hope you guys have a great week, and I will talk to you guys next episode.